The conference room fell silent as I walked in, my Louboutins clicking against the marble floor. My husband's arm was warm around my waist, his presence commanding respect from every person in the room. Across the table, I watched the color drain from Chen Wei's face as recognition hit him like a freight train. "Darling," my husband murmured, pulling out a chair for me, "let me introduce you to the marketing team, though I believe you already know my assistant director, Chen Wei." Chen Wei's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. The same man who had fired me 6 months ago, who had humiliated me in front of the entire office, who had called me worthless and incompetent, was now staring at me with pure, undiluted terror, because the woman he destroyed was now married to Jiang Industries' CEO, and she remembered everything. Everything, including how this exact scenario had played out in my previous life. Let me take you back to where it all started, or rather, where it all ended the first time. I was 26 years old when I died. Alone, broke, and broken in a tiny apartment that smelled of mold and desperation. The cause of death? Officially, it was pneumonia. Unofficially, it was poverty, exhaustion, and a family that had systematically destroyed every opportunity I'd ever had. My name is Lin Xiao, and I was born into what should have been privilege. My father, Lin Zhenguo, owned a moderately successful textile business. We weren't wealthy by elite standards, but we were comfortable. Comfortable enough that my childhood should have been filled with opportunity rather than neglect. But I had committed an unforgivable sin. I was born second, and I was born female. My older sister, Lin Mei, was everything I wasn't. Beautiful, charismatic, and absolutely ruthless. She was my mother's favorite, my father's pride, and the golden child who could do no wrong. I was the spare, the backup plan, the daughter who existed only to make Lin Mei look better by comparison. The abuse started young, not the obvious kind that leaves marks. My parents were too sophisticated for that. Instead, it was 1,000 tiny cruelties that accumulated like poison in my veins. When I won the district science competition at age 12, my mother forgot to attend the ceremony because Lin Mei had a hair appointment. When I got accepted to the top high school in the city, my father's response was, "Try not to embarrass us like you usually do." When I earned a full scholarship to university, Lin Mei threw such a tantrum about wanting a new car that my parents bought her a BMW and told me the scholarship was lucky because they couldn't have afforded to send both of us. But the real nightmare began when I entered the workforce. I had graduated with honors in marketing and communications, fluent in 3 languages, with multiple internship experiences at respected firms. I should have been able to write my own ticket. Instead, my father insisted I work at his company, not out of nepotism or family loyalty, but because Lin Mei wanted me where she could control me. You see, Lin Mei had married Chen Wei, an ambitious middle manager at Jiang Industries, one of the city's premier luxury goods conglomerates. She had her sights set on society status, designer clothes, and a lifestyle that required more money than Chen Wei's salary provided. So my father's textile company became their personal piggy bank, with me as the unwitting facilitator. For 3 years, I worked 80-hour weeks at Lin Textiles, managing accounts, securing contracts, and essentially running the day-to-day operations while my father golfed and Lin Mei raided the company funds. Every time I mentioned the discrepancies in the books, I was told to mind my own business. Every time I suggested we needed to stop the bleeding, I was called dramatic and ungrateful. Then came the catastrophe. Lin Mei had been embezzling for years, funneling money to Chen Wei for his gambling debts and her shopping addiction. When the company's largest client discovered we couldn't fulfill an order because Lin Mei had diverted the production funds, they sued. The lawsuit triggered an audit. The audit revealed the embezzlement, and my father, rather than face the truth about his precious eldest daughter, blamed me. Lin Xiao has always been jealous of her sister, he told the investigators, his face a mask of manufactured sorrow. I should have seen the signs of her corruption earlier. They had prepared their case meticulously, forged documents with my signature, fake email accounts in my name, witness testimony from employees Lin Mei had bribed or threatened. By the time I understood what was happening, I was facing criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and corporate theft. I spent my savings on lawyers who couldn't overcome the mountain of fabricated evidence. I was convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison. My father disowned me publicly, took out ads in the newspapers declaring I was no longer his daughter. My mother changed her phone number, Lin Mei gave tearful interviews about the betrayal of her troubled younger sister. Prison broke something fundamental inside me. Not just my spirit, though that certainly shattered. It broke my understanding of how the world worked, of family, of justice. I emerged 3 years later to find that Lin Textiles had been sold, my parents had retired to a beachfront property in Sanya, and Lin Mei was living in a luxury apartment in the city center. Her embezzlement charges mysteriously dropped due to insufficient evidence. I had nothing. No money, no references, no prospects. My criminal record ensured that no legitimate company would hire me. I bounced from job to job, convenience stores, cleaning services, whatever would take someone with my background. I lived in apartments so cheap the walls literally crumbled, eating instant noodles and rice for weeks at a time. And then, in the cruelest twist of fate, Chen Wei's career finally took off. He was promoted to assistant director at Zhang Industries, a position with real power and prestige. I heard about it from a former colleague who didn't know my story, who spoke enthusiastically about how Chen Wei was really making something of himself. I died 6 months later, feverish and delirious, coughing up blood in that moldy apartment. My last coherent thought was wondering if anyone would even notice I was gone. I woke up on my 23rd birthday, screaming. My mother's annoyed voice came through my childhood bedroom door. Sabah says, "Lin Xiao, stop that ridiculous noise. You're not a child anymore. Your sister needs her beauty sleep before her date with Chen Wei." Chen Wei, Lin Mei's new boyfriend, the man who would become her husband, my brother-in-law, and eventually the instrument of my destruction. But this was 3 years before everything fell apart. 3 years before the embezzlement scandal. 3 years before my conviction. I had been given an impossible gift, a second chance. The memories came flooding back over the next few hours. Every betrayal, every cruelty, every detail of my previous life. I remembered things that hadn't happened yet. Chen Wei's gambling problem that would surface in 2 years. The audit that would destroy Lin Textiles. The forged documents with my signature. But I also remembered something else. Something I'd only learned about in my previous life while desperately researching from prison. Zhang Mingjie, the CEO of Zhang Industries, was looking for a wife, not in the traditional sense. Zhang Mingjie was one of those rare men who had built an empire from nothing, a self-made billionaire who valued competence, intelligence, and loyalty above all else. His father had been a humble factory worker, his mother a seamstress. He had put himself through business school, started with a single luxury goods store, and built it into a conglomerate worth billions. In my previous life, he had married at age 35, exactly 3 years from now, to a woman named Wang Yue, a marketing director known for her brilliance and integrity. I had read about their wedding in a magazine someone left in the prison library, staring at the photo of her elegant dress and thinking about how different my life might have been if I'd made different choices. But Wang Yue didn't exist in my world yet. She wouldn't join Zhang Industries for another 2 years, wouldn't catch Zhang Mingjie's attention until a year after that. Which meant that position was open. The realization hit me like lightning. I could change everything. Not just escape my fate. I could claim the life that should have been mine all along. I could become powerful enough that my family could never hurt me again. And I could make them pay for every single thing they'd done. But I had to be smart. I had to be patient. And I had to let them think they were winning right up until the moment I destroyed them. The next 3 years were the most difficult and rewarding of my life. I continued working at Lin Textiles, but this time I was prepared. I documented everything, every instance of Lin Mei's embezzlement, every forged signature, every diverted fund. I set up a secure cloud account they didn't know about and uploaded copies of every incriminating document. I installed keyloggers on the office computers and recorded conversations on my phone. But I was careful never to let them know I was watching. I played the role of the obedient younger sister, the dedicated daughter, the naive employee who didn't understand the sophisticated world of business. When Lin Mei diverted funds, I raised a small concern and then dropped it when she snapped at me. When my father asked me to work late again, I agreed without complaint. When Chen Wei, now my brother-in-law, started showing up drunk to family dinners, I pretended not to notice. All the while, I was preparing. I took online courses in advanced marketing, data analytics, and luxury brand management. I studied Zhang Industries obsessively, their corporate structure, their values, their expansion plans. I learned everything I could about Zhang Mingzhe himself, his habits, his preferences, his philosophy on business. And I waited for my moment. It came 18 months into my second life, at a charity gala I had no business attending. Lin Mei had been invited as Chen Wei's plus one, but she came down with food poisoning the night before, the natural consequence of eating sushi from a restaurant I'd anonymously reported to the health inspector for violations. Chen Wei, desperate to network with the elite attendees, brought me instead as a last-minute replacement. "Try not to embarrass me," he hissed as we entered the ballroom. "Just smile and don't talk to anyone important." I smiled and agreed. Then I proceeded to ignore every word he said. Zhang Mingzhe was standing near the bar alone for a rare moment between networking obligations. He looked exactly like his photos, tall, impeccably dressed, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. At 32, he radiated the kind of confidence that came from building an empire with his bare hands. I walked up to him, channeling every ounce of courage I'd gained from dying once already. "Mr. Zhang, I apologize for approaching you so directly, but I have a business proposition that I think will interest you." He raised an eyebrow, his expression hovering between amusement and annoyance. "Do you now? And you are?" "Lin Xiao. I work in textiles, but I won't for much longer. I'm going to need a new position in about 6 months, and I'd like it to be at Jiang Industries." The amusement won. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his austere face. "That's quite bold. What makes you think I'd hire you?" "Because I'm going to tell you exactly how to break into the Southeast Asian luxury market, solve your supply chain issues with sustainable fabrics, and increase your profit margins by 15%. And I'm going to do it in the next 10 minutes because that's when your business development director is going to come looking for you." I had exactly 9 minutes and 30 seconds before his director appeared. I used every second of it to outline a strategy I'd spent months developing, drawing on my previous life's knowledge of market trends and my current life's intimate understanding of textile production. I spoke about consumer preferences in Singapore and Thailand, about innovative bamboo silk production methods, about vertical integration opportunities. When the director appeared, Zhang Mingzhe held up a hand. "Give us 5 more minutes." I finished my pitch. He studied me with those penetrating eyes, and I had the sudden terrifying thought that he could see right through me, could see the reborn soul in this young woman's body. Then he handed me his business card. "Call my assistant on Monday. We'll set up a formal interview." Chen Wei found me 10 minutes later, furious. "What did you say to him? You better not have embarrassed me." I apologized for taking up his time. I lied smoothly. "Don't worry, Jay. I was perfectly appropriate." But I had his card burning in my clutch, and I had hope burning in my chest. The interview process at Jiang Industries was grueling. 3 rounds, each more challenging than the last. But I was prepared in a way no other candidate could be. I knew what they valued. I knew what they needed. And I had the drive of someone who had already lost everything once and refused to let it happen again. I was offered a position as a junior marketing associate, reporting to the regional director. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a foothold. I accepted immediately. "You're leaving Lin Textiles?" My father's face was purple with rage. "After everything we've done for you?" "I've been offered an opportunity at Jiang Industries, Father. It's a chance to expand my skills." "You ungrateful girl, we gave you a job when you had nothing." I bit my tongue against the retort that I'd been running his company while he golfed. "I'll give 2 weeks' notice, of course." "You'll give 1 week," Lin Mei snapped, appearing in the doorway. "Since you're so eager to abandon the family, you might as well do it quickly." I gave 1 week. On my last day, I made sure to back up all my evidence files one final time. The cloud account was pristine, untraceable, and contained every piece of proof I needed to prove that Lin Mei and Chen Wei had embezzled over 2 million yuan from Lin Textiles over 3 years. I also had evidence that my father knew and had covered it up, that my mother had helped launder money through her personal accounts, and that they had already started preparing to frame me just as they had in my previous life. But I didn't do anything with it yet. The time wasn't right. My first year at Jiang Industries was a masterclass in sabasa, corporate excellence. The company culture was everything Lin Textiles wasn't: meritocratic, ethical, demanding, but fair. For the first time in my life, I was judged purely on my performance, and I excelled. I threw myself into every project, volunteered for the difficult assignments, and slowly built a reputation as someone who could be relied upon to deliver exceptional results. My Southeast Asian market analysis became the basis for a successful expansion into Thailand. My sustainable fabric initiative reduced production costs and improved the company's environmental rating, and I made sure that Zhang Mingzhe noticed. Not through office politics or manipulation, but through results. Every report I submitted was flawless. Every presentation I gave was compelling. Every strategy I proposed was backed by meticulous research. He started requesting me specifically for high-level projects. Then he started inviting me to executive meetings to present my findings. Then he started asking me to join him for working dinners to discuss long-term strategy. I watched him carefully during those dinners, saw the man beneath the CEO persona. He was brilliant, yes, but also principled in a way that was rare among the wealthy. He had grown up poor and never forgotten it. He treated the cleaning staff with the same respect he showed his board members. He donated anonymously to scholarships and worker training programs, and he was lonely, though he'd never admit it. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked one evening after we'd finished discussing a potential merger. "Building all this, I mean. It must require sacrifices." "Every day," he admitted, something flickering in his eyes. "My father died before he saw any of this. My mother worries I work too hard. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but I eat most of my meals alone at my desk." "That sounds familiar," I said quietly. "You work too hard too," he observed. "Your colleagues tell me you're often the last one in the office." "I don't have much to go home to." The truth slipped out before I could stop it. "My family and I are not close." "That must be difficult." "It's freeing, actually. It means I only have to be accountable to myself." He studied me for a long moment. "I think you're one of the most fascinating people I've ever met, Lin Xiao." My heart stuttered. "Sir?" "Zhang Mingzhe, please. When it's just us, call me Mingzhe." Our relationship evolved gradually over the next 6 months. The working dinners became real dinners. The discussions about business strategy expanded to include books, art, philosophy. He showed me his favorite hidden restaurants in the city. I introduced him to the independent bookstore where I spent my weekends. The first time he kissed me, we were standing on his penthouse balcony overlooking the city lights. He had just told me about his father's death, about the promise he'd made to build something that would make his parents proud. "You already have," I said. "They would be so proud of you." He cupped my face in his hands. "May I kiss you?" I nodded, and the world shifted on its axis. We kept our relationship private at first. Zhang Mingzhe insisted on it, not because he was ashamed, but because he wanted to protect me from office gossip and the inevitable accusations that I'd slept my way to success. Only after I was promoted to senior marketing director, on merit, based on my project's measurable results, did we go public. The day we announced our engagement, my phone exploded with messages from my family. My father: "Lin Xiao, we need to talk about this immediately. How could you not inform us?" My mother: "Your sister is very upset. You've always been out of selfish." Lin Mei: "You think you're so special now? Just wait. Everyone will see through you." Chen Wei: "Congratulations. I always knew you were more ambitious than you let on." That last message made my skin crawl. Because Chen Wei was now my direct supervisor at Jiang Industries. After years of barely adequate performance, he'd finally been promoted to assistant director, in no small part because Zhang Mingzhe believed in giving people opportunities to grow. I had watched Chen Wei's promotion with mixed feelings. On one hand, it positioned him perfectly for the revenge I'd been planning. On the other hand, it meant working closely with the man who had fired me in my previous life. But I had a plan, and plans required patience. 6 months after our engagement, Zhang Mingzhe and I were married in an intimate ceremony in Provence. It was everything my first life hadn't been: beautiful, genuine, filled with people who actually cared about us. My family wasn't invited. I had sent them a brief announcement and nothing more. The wedding made national news. Textile worker's son turned CEO marries company director, read one headline. A modern love story, Jiang Mingjie and Lin Xiao, read another. Photos of us were everywhere. Me in a vintage-inspired lace gown, him looking at me like I was the only person in the world. When we returned from our honeymoon in Santorini, the office dynamics had shifted dramatically. I was no longer just the brilliant marketing director. I was the CEO's wife. People treated me differently, some with more respect, some with thinly veiled resentment, some with obvious calculation. Chen Wei's reaction was the most interesting. He seemed caught between terror that I might use my new position against him and hope that he could somehow leverage our connection to advance his own career. "Congratulations on the marriage, Bane," he said, stopping by my office the first day back. "I hope this won't change our working relationship." "Why would it?" I asked innocently. "My position hasn't changed. I'm still the director of international marketing." "Of course, it's just some people might see it differently now." "Let them. I earned my place here before I ever met my husband, and I'll continue to earn it every day." But we both knew that wasn't entirely true anymore. I wasn't just Lin Xiao, the marketing director. I was Lin Xiao, the CEO's wife, which meant I had access to resources and information I'd never had before, including information about Chen Wei's performance reviews. I spent the next 3 months building my case meticulously, not against Chen Wei directly, but against his patron, my sister. You see, Lin Mei had gotten cocky. With Chen Wei in a prominent position at Jiang Industries, she assumed she had protection. She had started embezzling more brazenly, taking larger amounts, covering her tracks less carefully. In my previous life, this escalation had triggered the audit that destroyed Lin Textiles. In this life, I was going to ensure it destroyed them instead. I began by having a quiet conversation with my father's accountant, a man named Liu Wei, who had always been kind to me. I told him I was concerned about some irregularities I'd noticed during my time at the company that I wanted to ensure my father's legacy was protected. Liu Wei, it turned out, had been documenting the embezzlement for years, terrified of being implicated but unsure how to stop it. When I assured him I would protect him in exchange for his cooperation, he handed over everything: spreadsheets, bank statements, email chains, recorded conversations. It was more than I'd even hoped for. Next, I approached Jiang Mingjie, not as his wife begging for a favor, but as a director presenting a business problem. "We have a potential liability in the company," I said during one of our working dinners at home. "One of our assistant directors may be involved in financial impropriety with a supplier." His expression went cold. "Explain." I laid out what I knew about Chen Wei: the gambling debts, the suspicious payments, the connection to Lin Textiles' embezzlement scheme. I showed him the evidence I'd gathered. Not everything, just enough to raise serious concerns. "This is your brother-in-law," he said carefully. "This is an employee who may be compromising the company's integrity," I corrected. "My relationship to him is irrelevant to the facts." He studied me for a long moment. "You're certain about this?" "I'm certain there's enough evidence to warrant an investigation. What that investigation reveals is not for me to say." "All right, I'll have compliance look into it quietly." But I wasn't done. The next day, I made an anonymous call to the Commercial Crimes Bureau, providing them with just enough information about Lin Textiles' embezzlement to trigger their own investigation. Then I waited. The investigations proceeded simultaneously, each one feeding information to the other through official channels. Within 2 weeks, the compliance department had flagged serious concerns about Chen Wei's financial connections. Within a month, the Commercial Crimes Bureau had raided Lin Textiles and frozen their accounts, and I watched it, all unfold with the satisfaction of someone who had orchestrated every note of a symphony. The day everything came crashing down was a Tuesday. Chen Wei was called into a meeting with compliance, HR, and Jiang Mingjie. I wasn't in the room, but I didn't need to be. I knew exactly what they were telling him. That evidence had emerged of his connection to embezzlement schemes at Lin Textiles, that his financial records showed suspicious transactions, that his employment was being terminated effective immediately for violation of the company's ethics code. Chen Wei's termination was all over the office within an hour. The whispers were immediate. He'd been fired for corruption, for stealing, for bringing disgrace to Jiang Industries. I was in a meeting with the European expansion team when my assistant knocked on the door. "Mrs. Jiang, I apologize for interrupting, but there's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent." Chen Wei stood in my office doorway, his face a mask of fury and desperation. "You did this," he hissed. "You've been planning this all along." I dismissed my assistant and closed the door. When I turned back to him, I let him see the truth in my eyes for the first time. "Yes," I said simply. "I did." "Why? I never did anything to you." I laughed, a cold sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in my chest. "You haven't yet, but you would have. You were going to help my sister destroy me, frame me for her crimes, and watch me go to prison for embezzlement. So I decided to destroy you first." "You're insane. That makes no sense." "Doesn't it?" I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder. "These are the documents your wife forged with my signature. These are the bank transfers she made in my name. These are the witness statements she prepared, coaching employees to testify against me. She started creating this framework 2 years ago, Chen Wei, right around the time you were promoted. She was always planning to sacrifice me to cover her tracks." His face went white. How do I have these? Because I'm smarter than both of you ever gave me credit for. I documented everything. Every theft, every lie, every crime. Even if that's true, you can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I've given all of this evidence to the Commercial Crimes Bureau. They raided Lin Textiles this morning. Your wife, my father, and my mother were all arrested an hour ago. They're being charged with embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Chen Wei staggered back like I'd struck him. No, Lin Mei said. Lin Mei said what? That she had it all under control? That she'd made sure the blame would fall on me? She tried, Chen Wei, she really did. But this time, I was ready. This time? He looked at me with sudden suspicion. What do you mean, this time? I smiled. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're finished. Jiang Industries has terminated your employment with cause, which means no severance, no references, and a permanent mark on your professional record. The industry will know you were fired for corruption. No reputable company will touch you. You've ruined my life. No, you ruined your life when you married a criminal and helped her steal millions. I just made sure the consequences finally caught up with you. He lunged toward my desk, and I hit the panic button I'd had installed weeks ago. Security was there in seconds, escorting a screaming Chen Wei from the building. I sat down at my desk, my hands shaking slightly. It was done. After years of planning, after dying and being reborn, after sacrificing and scheming and enduring, it was finally done. The trial was a spectacle. My father, mother, and Lin Mei were prosecuted together, facing a mountain of evidence that included every document I'd collected, every recording I'd made, every witness statement from employees they'd threatened into silence. The prosecutor laid out a pattern of systematic embezzlement spanning 5 years, totaling over 3 million yuan. They showed how Lin Mei had planned to frame me, how my parents had participated in the scheme, how they had attempted to destroy evidence once the investigation began. Lin Mei's lawyer tried to argue that she was a troubled young woman who had made mistakes, that she deserved leniency, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Lin Mei, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 8 years in prison. My father, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 6 years in prison. My mother, guilty on money laundering and conspiracy, sentenced to 4 years in prison. I attended every day of the trial, sitting in the back of the courtroom in my designer suits, my wedding ring gleaming on my finger. I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to know exactly who had brought them down. The day the sentences were read, Lin Mei turned to look at me. The beautiful, charismatic golden child was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed woman in an orange jumpsuit. She mouthed something that might have been, "Why?" I mouthed back, "Justice." Chen Wei's fall was slower, but no less complete. Without his position at Jiang Industries and with his connection to the scandal now public knowledge, he couldn't find work anywhere in the corporate sector. His gambling debts, previously manageable with embezzled funds, came crashing down on him. Within 6 months, he had declared bankruptcy. I heard through the office gossip network that he'd taken a job at a convenience store, that he'd moved into a tiny apartment in one of the city's cheaper districts, that he looked 10 years older, worn down by the weight of his choices. It was exactly the life I'd lived in my previous existence, and I felt no sympathy whatsoever. The board meeting where I first faced Chen Wei after his firing was scheduled 3 months after the trial concluded. He'd been invited back, not as an employee, but as the subject of an agenda item. Zhang Mingjie had proposed creating a corporate ethics training program using real case studies, and Chen Wei's termination was to be one of the primary examples. The board needed to discuss whether to publicly acknowledge the case or keep it internal. When Chen Wei walked into that conference room, escorted by security and looking like a broken shadow of himself, the dynamic had shifted so completely that it felt like a different universe. "Mr. Chen," Zhang Mingjie said coolly, "thank you for agreeing to participate in this discussion." "I didn't think I had a choice," Chen Wei said, his voice hoarse. "You always have a choice. You could have chosen honesty over corruption. You could have chosen integrity over greed. You chose poorly." The board members looked uncomfortable, but no one contradicted him. Chen Wei had become a cautionary tale, a symbol of everything Jiang Industries stood against. And I sat at my husband's right hand, the director of international operations now, my business acumen finally recognized and rewarded. I had expanded the company into 5 new markets. I had increased profits by 30%. I had proven that I was brilliant, not because of who I married, but despite everyone who had tried to destroy me. When the meeting concluded and Chen Wei was escorted out, he looked at me one last time. The expression on his face was complex. Rage, yes, but also something like awe. He had finally understood what I'd been trying to tell him, that he had underestimated me so catastrophically that it had cost him everything. "Was it worth it?" he asked as he passed my chair. I thought about my previous life, about dying alone and broken, about the years of abuse and neglect and systematic destruction of my spirit, about waking up with a second chance and choosing to take everything they had tried to steal from me. "Yes," I said. "It was worth every second." 2 years after the trial, Zhang Mingjie and I stood on the balcony of our new home, a penthouse with a view of the entire city, designed exactly to our specifications. Below us, the lights of Shanghai glittered like scattered diamonds. "Happy?" he asked, pulling me against his side. "Deliriously, I admitted. Though I sometimes wonder if I should feel guilty about how happy I am." "Why would you feel guilty?" "Because my happiness came at the cost of my family's destruction." He turned me to face him, his expression serious. "Your family destroyed themselves. You simply made sure they faced consequences for their actions. That's not cruelty, Xiao. That's justice." "I know, but sometimes I wonder if I'm a good person or just a vengeful one." "Can't you be both?" He smiled slightly. "You took revenge, yes, but you also built something real. Look at what you've accomplished. The markets you've opened, the jobs you've created, the standards you've set for ethical business practices. You could have simply destroyed them and walked away. Instead, you built a legacy." I leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You were brilliant long before you met me. I just gave you a platform to show it." We stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city below. Somewhere in that sprawl, Lin Mei was in her 4th year of prison. My father was in his 3rd year. My mother was serving the last months of her sentence. Chen Wei was working night shifts and drowning in debt. And I was here, in this beautiful home, married to a man who loved and respected me, running international operations for one of the most successful companies in Asia. The girl who had died alone in a moldy apartment, the victim everyone had overlooked and underestimated, had become the woman everyone now wanted to impress. The unfair advantage of rebirth hadn't made me powerful. It had simply given me the chance to show the power I'd always possessed. Do you ever think about telling someone? Mingzhe asked suddenly. About the rebirth, I mean. I looked up at him in shock. You know? He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Xiao, I've known since that first night at the gala. You pitched me a strategy that wouldn't make sense for at least 2 years based on the current market. Either you were impossibly brilliant, or you knew something about the future. And you married me anyway? I married you because you were impossibly brilliant. The fact that you might also know the future was just a bonus. He kissed the top of my head. You don't have to tell me how it happened. I don't need to know. I just need you to know that I see you. All of you, including the parts you think you need to hide. And I love every version of you. Tears pricked my eyes. In my previous life, no one had ever really seen me. I had been invisible, overlooked, dismissed. Even at my own trial, I had been absent from my own story, a placeholder for my family's crimes. But Mingzhe saw me. He had always seen me. I love you, I whispered. I know, he said. With that slight smile, I'd come to adore. Now come inside. We have that charity gala tomorrow, and you need rest. The one for underprivileged students? The one where we're announcing the Lin Xiao Scholarship Fund, yes. I had established the scholarship 6 months ago using my own money I'd earned through my work, not through marriage. It provided full university funding for students from low-income families with a special preference for younger daughters who had been overlooked by their families. I wanted to give other girls the chance I'd never had in my first life. The opportunity to succeed based on their own merit, free from the shadow of favoritism and neglect. Do you think they'll come? I asked. Who? My family. They've all been released or will be soon. The gala is public. Would it bother you if they did? I considered the question carefully. A year ago, I would have said, yes. The wounds had been too fresh, the anger too hot. But now? No, I said slowly. I think I'd like them to see what I've built. Not to gloat, but to show them that their worst efforts couldn't keep me down. That I won not because I destroyed them, but because I built something they could never touch. That's growth, Mingzhe observed. A year ago, you would have wanted them to suffer. Now you just want them to see that you succeeded. Is that bad? It's human, and it's healthy. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. You've processed your trauma, taken your revenge, and moved forward with your life. That's more than most people manage. The gala was magnificent. Held in the ballroom of Shanghai's most prestigious hotel, it drew celebrities, business leaders, and philanthropists from across Asia. I wore a custom-made gown in deep emerald green, my hair swept up in an elegant chignon, diamonds glittering at my throat and ears. Mingzhe stood beside me, devastating in a custom tuxedo, as we greeted guests and accepted congratulations on the scholarship fund. The energy in the room was electric, filled with the power and prestige I had once thought would forever be out of my reach. And then I saw them. Lin Mei stood near the back of the ballroom, dressed in a cheap department store dress that hung badly on her thin frame. Prison had aged her dramatically. Her skin was sallow, her hair dull, her eyes haunted. Beside her stood Chen Wei in an ill-fitting suit that looked borrowed. They hadn't been invited, but the gala was technically open to the public, with donations encouraged, and they had apparently scraped together enough for the minimum entry fee. I watched them watching me, saw the calculation in their eyes. They were here for a reason, and I suspected that reason was money. They thought, perhaps, that I might be willing to help them now that I was wealthy and secure. That family bonds might mean something after all. They were wrong. Excuse me. I murmured to the deputy mayor I'd been speaking with. I see some people I need to address. Mingzhe's hand touched my elbow. Me to come. No, this is something I need to do alone. I crossed the ballroom, aware of the eyes following me, the whispers starting. Everyone knew the story by now. The brilliant executive who had brought down her corrupt family. My approach to Lin Mei and Chen Wei was going to be the gossip of the evening. Lin Xiao, Lin Mei started, her voice a shadow of its former arrogance. We need to talk. Do we? I kept my tone pleasant, aware of the listening ears around us. We're family, she said desperately. Blood is thicker than water. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, I corrected gently. The bonds we choose are stronger than the bonds we're born into, and I choose not to be bound to you anymore. Chen Wei stepped forward. We just want a chance to start over. Alone, maybe. Or you could talk to your husband about a job. No. The single word fell like a stone into still water. Chen Wei recoiled as if I'd slapped him. No? Lin Mei's voice rose. After everything we did for you? We raised you, gave you opportunities. You gave me nothing but pain, I said, still in that pleasant conversational tone. You stole from me, framed me, tried to destroy my life. In another world, you succeeded. But this isn't that world. In this world, I won. You're still our sister, Lin Mei tried, tears streaming down her face now. Whether they were real or calculated, I no longer cared. Doesn't that mean anything? It means I'm the sister who learned to be stronger than you. The sister who built an empire while you were busy tearing things down. The sister who understood that real power comes from creation, not destruction. I turned to Chen Wei. You once fired me. Do you remember? No, of course you don't, because it didn't happen in this timeline. But in another life, you called me into your office and told me I was worthless, incompetent, a waste of company resources. You humiliated me in front of my colleagues and had security escort me from the building. His face went white. You never did it here. But you would have. You were always going to be the instrument of my destruction, Chen Wei. So I destroyed you first. And I don't regret it for a second. Please, Lin Mei whispered. We have nothing. No money, no prospects, no future. You have everything. Can't you spare something for your family? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just a vast, cool indifference. I'm creating 100 scholarships for girls like me, I said. Girls who are overlooked, underestimated, abused by the very people who should protect them. Girls who deserve a chance to show the world how brilliant they are. That's where my money goes. That's where my energy goes. Not to people who had every advantage and squandered it on cruelty and greed. I started to walk away, then paused. If you want to rebuild your lives, I suggest you do what I did. Work hard, be ethical, and earn it. The world doesn't owe you anything just because you were born into privilege. And neither do I. I walked back across the ballroom to where Mingzhe was waiting. He took my hand, squeezing gently. All right, he asked. Perfect, I said. And I meant it. 3 years later, I stood on a stage at a women's business conference addressing an audience of thousands. My story is not unique, I told them. There are countless women who have been overlooked, underestimated, and abused by the very people who should have supported them. What makes my story different is that I got a second chance, not through magic or miracle, but through my own determination to refuse victimhood. The audience leaned forward, hanging on every word. I won't tell you that success is easy. It isn't. I won't tell you that hard work is always rewarded. It often isn't. But I will tell you this. Your worth is not determined by the people who failed to see it. Your potential is not limited by the people who tried to crush it. And your future is not defined by the people who tried to steal it. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. I saw women of all ages, all backgrounds, all struggling with their own versions of my story. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. And if you choose to become brilliant, powerful, and successful, if you choose to build instead of break, to create instead of destroy, then nothing and no one can stop you. The applause was thunderous. As I left the stage, I caught sight of myself in a monitor, poised, confident, powerful. The woman I had become was everything the girl I had been deserved to be. Ming-jae was waiting in the wings, pride shining in his eyes. That was incredible. I had good material to work with, I said, kissing his cheek. A lifetime of pain makes for a compelling narrative. You've turned trauma into triumph. That's not just survival, Xiao. That's art. We walked out together into the sunshine, into a life I had built from the ashes of my death. Behind us, somewhere in the city, my family was struggling with the consequences of their choices. But I had moved past them, past the need for revenge or validation. I had won not because I had destroyed them, but because I had become someone they could never touch. The girl who died in a moldy apartment had been reborn as a woman who stood atop the world, and this time no one, not family, not circumstance, not even fate itself, could tear me down. I had let him fire me again. I had watched my family fall, and I had become exactly who I was always meant to be: powerful, brilliant, and utterly untouchable. This was my victory. This was my revenge. This was my life. And it was everything I had died for, and more.